Damn it, the microphone, I mean. The fear.
All right, just to honor everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know that we'll have more parents come in as we move along. We're going to try to stay in somewhat eyesight of our camera because we're also live streaming this. I just want to thank everyone for coming out and having a bit of a conversation. So I'm going to flip next screen. You'll kind of be able to read this screen, but we'll keep going through. So I am Bob Bales. I'm the Executive Director of Secondary Curriculum and Instruction.
Sorry about that. Rodney Trice, Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Equity and Engagement. Good to be here.
All right, so we're going to go through about a quick 10-minute-ish, maybe shorter than that presentation, just to kind of go through just some background information. If you were on the virtual presentation last week, it's the same presentation, so we're going to go through. So with everything that we do, we try to make sure that we are guiding committee. So in November, our Trigo Ed facilitator came in and he worked with our team for the first time. So at that meeting, it really wasn't as much about the content of what we're doing, but the process of how the entire flow of the thing will go. So we actually went through a presentation on dress code, which has been used in other districts, just to get the team an idea of the flow of the work. Also during that time, our Trigo Ed rep, Dr. Sipes, met with each high school for a full day. So any teacher was able to come in during their planning periods, and we talked about, well, not we, he was actually to talk about limitations and barriers within the current schedules, and what we should be looking for as we're working towards an aligned schedule. This information was shared with the guiding committee, and as you guys have seen too, that information is on our webpage. In January, Dr. Sipes went out and visited each of our high schools. We asked each of our high school principals to come up with a diverse representation of the students within the school. So within that half day, Dr. Sipes was able to meet with different groups, talking about what the students appreciate in their schedule, what they'd like to see change. Dr. Sipes also met with our central office staff for about 2 hours, to talk about advantages and limitations to our schedules. And then we sent out a parent survey that parents have seen, and again, that information is also online. So in February, we really started to ramp up the work a little bit. Our guiding committee really wanted to have some more specific feedback from our students. While the feedback that we had was good, we also wanted to make sure that it was a little more pinpointed. So our guiding committee asked us to go back, get more feedback, so we ended up going back into our AVID classrooms, our ML multi-language learner classrooms, and our newcomer classrooms to gather additional feedback, and members from our IC team were able to pop into those, and our equity team were able to pop in and get some more information. There's a couple questions here. I won't read them to you because it's also online, but these are kind of the questions that we went through as we were going through. So in March, after gathering all the feedback, the guiding committee ended up going through and looking at that data to say, okay, what's the key criterion that we need to measure our alternatives or our schedules against? So going through that, there was numerous different criterion that were decided upon. They ranked all the way from a 10 or a must, all the way down to a 3. So basically we came up with a criterion, and then we went through and we decided, we have to make sure that it aligns with state policy. We are not going to adopt a schedule that doesn't meet those requirements. We looked at CTE credentialing. What schedules worked best to make sure that we met our CTE credentials, and which ones will we have to have a little more flexibility with. Later in March, another 2 days, we came back as a guiding committee, and we looked at 12 different schedules that we had collectively decided to review, and we went through for each single one, each of those criterion, and how well does it meet the criterion, that schedule meet that criterion for that individual schedule. So with that as well, we went back and we ranked each of those. You guys have seen that on our webpage. And then we also had an additional session that we had in April. So before we actually went back and talked about the risk with our guiding committee, we wanted to make sure that we went back to the high schools to get additional feedback from the teachers. So at that point, we had our 12 schedules. There was a numerical number attached to each of them based on how well they met the criterion that we had. So teachers were able to ingest that. And then we spent about 3 to 4 hours at each school just gathering feedback from teachers in terms of what might be issues, what are some things that you're thinking about, what are risks. And we were able to take that information and share it back with our guiding committee. That guiding committee then met for one last time. We went through the risks that came up with teachers, with our EC staff, with our ML and newcomer staff, the various different stakeholders that we reached out to. And from there, we were able to really determine what's the ranking that we felt comfortable with as a guiding committee moving forward with. Since then, the guiding committee, like I said, they had a few options that we sent to school leadership. We met with school leadership to determine which schedule, for the most part, is going to fit the needs that we have moving forward, and we will be making that presentation on Thursday. So again, just our guiding committee. They met 9 different days over the course of the school year. Consisted of parents, students, counselors, teachers, school and district administrators, facilitated by Dr. Sipes with Trigo Ed. And honestly, we're that touch point within the buildings in terms of the work that was ongoing. So if a teacher was wondering, like, all right, what does that process look like? They were the people to kind of go to, in addition to our central office leadership that when we were visiting schools, of course, had conversations with teachers. Just a real quick here, just in case we need a little further clarification on what these schedules kind of look like and defined. So we have a 4x4 block, and that 4x4 block is essentially, you take the school day, you divide it up into 4s outside of a flex and a lunchtime, and teachers and students will then have those classes for the entire school year, for the entire semester. So you'd have 4 the first semester, you'd switch those classes again, and then you'd have 4 the second semester for a total of 8 in the year. An AB block, students take 4 classes each day, but they rotate every other day. So one class you'd have your A classes, or one day you'd have your A classes of 4 classes, and then the next day you would bounce into your B classes, and you would rotate those every single day for the entire school year. Our combo block is basically what it says, is that combination of both. You may have some students that have, or some classes that are semester-based, that you would have one class the first semester, one class the second semester, and then you would possibly have another class that rotated that A and B day. So we'd have that combination. Skinnies. So basically within that longer period of time, let's say that it's 75 to 95 minutes or whatever that time would be, you would take that time and you would divide it by 2, and that you would have that entire class for the entire year as we move forward. Smart lunch, just if you saw smart lunch in there, really that's taking that lunchtime that you have right now, you're extending it to be a longer period of time. So if right now it's 40 minutes, you might extend it to 60 minutes, 70 minutes, whatever you're looking at. And then that opportunity is that students have that time to determine, okay, I need some additional support in this class. Maybe a teacher reaches out and said, I need you to come in during this time. And we're able to pull those kids back for some intervention. And then lastly, and this is what students spoke to a lot, is just having that flex time, that flexible time for students to work on whatever it is that they need to get done. Working with teachers, time to study, participate in SEL, relearn, remediate, all the things that as a through line with every single student population we reached out to, so that they need that time within the day with the stress they have. So What we're going to do from here is we will open it up to you all to kind of share out if there is specific feedback you have on an individual schedule, if there are risks that you feel are associated with it that we need to take into consideration as we're moving forward, feedback in general. And then what I'm going to make sure I also do, and Greg's going to help me with this, when you ask your question, I want to make sure that we hand the mic off to you so that people that are live streaming can also hear the question. So I'll open up to the floor.
Hi. At the end of the 130 or so page report from the guiding committee, it was mentioned that the administration recommendation is for a 4x4 block. However, it's not very clear what that administration is. Is that an administration that includes the members of the guiding committee, or was it just like a Lincoln Center decision?
All right, thanks for the question. So our district administration, we talked about that as we had district and individual school leaders, so principals, that met last week and looked at the schedules that we had and trying to figure out, as we're trying to move forward as a collective whole, which one of those schedules, when we included the risks, we included everything else, which schedule we felt was the best schedule to move forward with as a recommendation to the board.
So jumping off that, because I definitely missed that there was a recommendation. Which one is the recommendation?
So the 4x4 block with a daily flex period is the administration's recommendation. From the report, you may remember that there were 3 schedules that kind of rose to the top above all. So within those 3 that the guiding committee identified as the top schedules, the administration's recommendation is one of the 3, which is the 4x4 block with a daily flex time. Not with the AB. So you have 2 that kind of do the AB as well as the 4x4. So it's not either one of those. It's just a pure 4x4 block. So if you can imagine students having kind of 4 classes in one day, and in between, a set of those classes, there's a flex period where you can go to clubs, get additional support for academics, SEL. That's the kind of the framing of that schedule.
Hi, can you hear me? Is that working? Okay. So part of how some of these blocks rose to the top was the giving a weight for the longer periods, the longer class periods. So I just want to understand why you all ranked those as being a 10 for having like a long, like 90-minute period versus what's currently like for Chapel Hill and East being like a 45 or 50-minute. Like, what went into your thoughts on why longer is better?
Get my steps into that. No, I appreciate the question. So with that, and I would say it was not a district administration going through and deciding if this was a 10, this was a 9. Every single time you see a number on that, whatever report you're looking at, every single one of those had a lengthy conversation that went with that. When we said that we had 9 days, it truly was like, all right, is this a 10? Is it a 9? Is it an 8? In terms of the criteria, and then, okay, if it matches up with that, so if I'm looking at a 4x4, how does this match up in terms of, if you said maximize instructional time? Truly looking at that as, are we able to maximize that time in terms of, okay, students are able to come in, they have a longer period of time, they're only, asked to focus on, 4 subjects or 4 contents over the course of the semester, and all those different things that went into that. We didn't necessarily, write down every single thing that was, brought up in that conversation, but with each of those, everybody within that guiding committee, had pieces of it that they were able to speak to. Okay, if we were able to do this, this would happen. If we weren't able to do that, this would happen. So that kind of is where, yep.
And I would just add that it was also important to kind of look at stakeholder feedback. So when we looked at feedback from students, you may notice in the report where there's this tilt toward, feeling rushed in the 50 minutes sessions that are in the 7 period. Another reason that we looked at longer blocks is because we're actually also trying to build toward greater partnerships with community colleges and universities who align well with block schedules as well. So that was another reason that the guiding committee came up with longer blocks of time as opposed to the 50-minute, kind of 45-minute periods for courses. Students also talked about going deeper in terms of content, and carrying 7 periods throughout the course of an academic year was pretty heavy. And not only students from East and Chapel Hill, but here in Carrboro, they also carry 7 periods, although they're on the AB day, but they also talked about how it was a lot to carry. So those were conversations that kind of led to kind of scoring those pretty high, because that was the feedback that we'd received from the community. I'm sorry.
I like block scheduling, but I'm surprised that 4x4 was the top. I'm confused or I guess I'm wondering what the difference is and why people didn't like the AB block. It seems like having a subject one half of the year, if you then didn't continue with like a math class or even like the AP classes, I'm kind of wondering how you're dealing with all of that kind of stuff, language and stuff, or if you had it in the fall, then if you don't have it again until the very next year in the fall, why 4x4 makes more sense than the AB block?
That's a great question. So that could happen, but I think that also lends itself to academic advisement. So if I take a Math 1 one semester and the next semester is Math 2, we want to be sure that to the greatest extent possible we're offering sequencing. Now students could, or families could, decide to do something different. So there are a couple of reasons. If you look at the report, Carrboro is on AB block, and some of the feedback that we got from Carrboro was that the scheduling could be confusing to students and staff. That was both student and staff feedback, because one day you're on one schedule, the next day you're on another schedule. When we talked to EC teachers, they also talked about how for some of their students kind of tracking the days could be problematic, and that issue came up particularly among Carrboro staff and administrators in terms of being able to track the days. So those are a couple of the reasons that came up.
Sorry. Oh, thank you. If you have a kid doing an AP class, do they take it the whole year, or they'd only take it for one semester and then possibly have a whole semester off and then have to take the AP exam? So that's really tough, isn't it, for those kids? Yeah.
So that was also a big part of our conversation. So you may have students who take AB classes first semester, knowing that the AP exam is in the spring, May of the following semester. That was an issue that we discussed. We've also kind of looked at similar districts in terms of achievement to ours who run a 4x4. And so we've looked at schools that outperform our schools, but also those who kind of underperform. One of the things that we're finding is that for schools that are on the 4x4 and have a high number of students taking AP exams, who pass AP exams, there are a couple of support mechanisms that they have in place with respect to if a student takes a course first semester, it's going to take the exam in the spring of the second semester, how we can provide support to those students. So, so like a lot of the schools, they have built-in flex time, like what we're proposing. And so students who feel like they need to kind of have that review period can use that time to do some of that work. It also kind of, the College Board also indicated that they would come in and help us kind of look at whatever schedule is adopted to make recommendations in terms of best practice in terms of review as well.
Hi, Dr. Trace. My name is Tina Coinsmith, and I actually want to raise two issues. I want to follow up with Deborah's issue about learning loss with scheduling. With all due respect, I think you're absolutely wrong that advisors are going to be able to get people sequentially. For all language classes, all math classes, all science classes, those are sequential learning classes. And what you've just suggested is that all students in all schools will be able to take sequential semester classes in those three areas in order so that they don't have learning loss. What that means is students freshman and sophomore year are going to take all 4 math classes and all 4 science classes and all 4 language classes. At Chapel Hill High School, we have not been able to fill teachers. We have teachers not there. There is no way we are going to be able to get every student in all 4 schools 4 sequential classes in science, language, and math. It's just not going to happen. And so I'd love to hear your response to that. There will be learning loss. It will be dramatic. My second question is about AP classes. The Trago Ed report doesn't mention that at all, and it's shocking. You know, we're paying attention to the 1% of students who are going to community college classes. 60, 70% at Chapel Hill High School, 85% at East. That's the percentage of students taking AP classes. They're going to be super affected. Now, we're talking about the issue of they take a class one semester and they don't take their exam until the second semester. That is the least of our worries relative to AP classes. Given the calendar law in North Carolina, right now, second semester starts the end of January, beginning of February. My child takes his first AP class next week at the beginning of May. And what happens is what we will have is a full 6 weeks of that second semester schedule that is dead time. Students do not have curriculum do not have the opportunity to learn curriculum. There is absolutely not enough time to get an AP curriculum. And in a district like ours, why we would move to a system where we're really cutting instructional time is baffling to me. But even if you're going to say, okay, who cares about break kids in the AP classes? It's a huge equity issue. My kid, I'm going to hire him a tutor. I'm going to make sure he gets whatever he needs to get. I'm going to teach him English AP myself. I was a college English teacher. I'm going to make sure he has what he needs. Our students who do not have those supports at home are absolutely not going to be able to get through curriculum. We are working in our district to get all children access to AP courses, and for them to succeed, what we are doing is setting up our students without the top supports at home to fail in AP courses. We really don't want to do that. So I'd love to hear your response to how we're going to make everybody take all their math, language, and science classes in 4 consecutive semesters, which I'm assuring you will not happen, and why we didn't consider AP classes at all in what we're talking about here. And the important issues like there's just not enough time to get through the curriculum. It's prescribed. I have about 13 other issues that I hope to come back to, but those are the 2 I'll start with.
Appreciate it. To be fair, what I said was our goal is to make sure that we focus on course sequence. So I didn't say that it would happen. I said our goal is to make sure to the greatest extent possible that that does not happen, where we have large gaps in instruction. Well, perhaps, but most. We need the board to know that. We need you all as an administration to consider what that option will happen. I think what you. Well, I mean, I think that's a fair point, and I think to your point about it not being in the report, it is in the report where we very much unpacked AP courses and some of the risk. Okay. But we don't have evidence from a research perspective that there are large drop-offs in learning because of block scheduling. I'm not sure kind of what you were looking at to kind of make that determination, but But a summer typically, and I don't want to go back and forth, but a summer typically does not offer instruction. And so the difference between a summer and, how schooling operates throughout the school year is that students are very much engaged with their content. And the same content to the largest extent possible. So to compare drop-off in the summer months to school months, it's just not, I've never seen that, and learning loss. But let me finish. Let me finish. So I just want to be sure that when we talked about this as a guiding committee, AP classes very much came up. The idea of students taking courses in the fall and not having it into the spring. Yeah, so that also came up. If you look at the report, you'll see that we talk about making sure that the semesters are balanced, because what you're talking about is the second semester with all the activities and testing and that type of thing, there are typically less days. And so the guiding committee identified as a risk the balance of the semester. And so
there are 6 weeks after the first AP test that are still
right.
But the AP test is already happened.
Yeah.
They're not instruction.
Right.
So balancing the semester doesn't count.
Right.
You still have 6 weeks at the end of the semester.
Right. And that's exactly what, came up during the guiding committee. That was one of the risks. So part of that also lends itself to pacing. And so when I talked about the...
It's 6 weeks of instruction. You can't compress an extra. I encourage you to go to the AP. They're already moving as fast as they can move.
Right.
You can't add a month of instruction
Right.
in that spring semester. The reality is you are not going to get through spring. That's the
They're already doing homework for hours every night for their AP classes. You take 6 weeks out of there and give them that much more homework, and it's not feasible.
So
equivalent to a college class, which runs from the beginning of January through May.
Right.
We're losing the whole month of January based on how it works.
Right.
So you have to be able, there's not time to do the curriculum and AP class in the second semester.
Well, I would say that we do see examples regionally where very well-performing high schools are on a block. I mean, so yes, if you look at like Green Hope High School in Wake County, very high-performing on a 4x4. Their kids typically outperform our students on AP tests. Not necessarily, no. Right. Yeah. Right. But even if that is not the case, when you look at the AP website, they have all kinds of guidance on teaching AP courses on a block schedule, and not just from the standpoint of removing content, but suggestions in terms of we as the College Board has set the curriculum, and if you teach on a block schedule, this is the curriculum you're supposed to follow. So if you go to the College Board website, they all provide guidance on that, given that most of the high schools across the country operate on this type of schedule. Not all high schools do that. Some high schools, yes, but there are a lot of high schools that don't do that. And they offer guidance on the 7-period day, AB, 4x4, and others.
Respectfully, this schedule is a disaster for
Okay. Thank you.
I can go first.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Max Smith, a current senior here, so I've had a 4x4 in my freshman year, and since then we've had the alternating 8-day, roughly 8 AB day with the 7-period. I agree with all the concerns that have been shared to a much stronger extent. Like you said, you would plan to hopefully have sequential classes organized. As someone who has taken Latin for all years of high school and middle school, I am interested in pursuing this beyond high school. I know that's similar with other languages, and if I were to have a 4x4 and somehow get sequential classes, I would run out of all of the Latin classes in my first 2 years, and then have 2 years off before I have to take placement exams in college. Secondly, my other concern with 4x4 is that it said on the report, it says that one of the pros is that the risks are deemed manageable with no elaboration of how those risks are going to be managed. I also think that obvious AP concerns, but also the arts. I've taken music all 4 years as well. Is it something I'm interested in doing for years? And I would not be a good singer if I were able to only do it half of the year. I'm curious about how you think you can maintain skills in a time where you're only spending roughly a third of the year doing a skill, if you're counting the summer.
So that's a great point. The issue of the arts also came up in the guiding committee, and there may have to be some work done in terms of leveling. And so, for instance, if you're in band and you like band, and that's something you want to pursue, what we're not proposing that, you take band 1 and you have to kind of wait till the next year to take, band 2. For those who are interested in arts, we believe the 4x4 will give additional option to pursue arts. And there are certain arts courses that we can put in place that will kind of meet every block period, first semester and second semester. So if you pursue, we're seeing an option where you could do that more often if you wanted to.
That sounds great, but would that not then take up 2 of your class periods? Because in freshman year, I only have 2 electives, and if I wanted to do both art and a language throughout the year, I would not be able to with the 4x4. I would have to commit to doing one or the other to take up 2 class periods.
Yes. I just want to loop back to the administration recommendation real quick. So in this 134-page report, at the end, there is like a 4-page neat summary of all of the risks and the reasons with the 4x4 block schedule that the administration is recommending. However, there is none of that for the schedule that tied with that in the guiding committee. There is none of that for the schedule that actually got more votes than that in the guiding committee. And so I'm just wondering how you justify that, in the sense that the guiding committee had the recommendation, and now in this entire 134-page report filled with data, the only accessible synopsis essentially at the very end is the one that the administration recommends. It just feels like the guiding committee's recommendations are just being flaunted at the point.
So that's not actually true. So for each of the schedules, each of the 12, the risks are kind of identified for each of the 12 that are there, as well as the scoring for each.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a bit about the AB scheduling, which I think would address a lot of the concerns that are raised here. So it was trialed at Carborough High, the AB scheduling +1 hybrid, and I think it's been pretty successful. I think the one-day hybrid actually was, from what I've heard, the least the least liked part, but the AB scheduling part went very well. And with AB scheduling, you have students learning, swapping classes every other day, and you spread out the hours over the whole year. The students have more time to digest the material throughout the year, and a lot of learning happens outside the classroom. So I think spreading the material out like that, as an educator myself, is a great way to do it, and it aligns with college schedules and community college schedules, which you said was part of the motivation for thinking about the longer periods at the very beginning. And if I look at the document that the committee put together on the different scheduling that they recommend, the two top options were AB scheduling mixed with block scheduling. And then the fifth option, I believe it was the fifth option, was AB scheduling with one-day hybrid. But it looks like there was no option to just do AB scheduling throughout. So there were options to do only block scheduling throughout, but there are no options to do AB scheduling throughout. And I was wondering, so one question is, why was that? Why wouldn't you consider doing AB scheduling throughout, considering how successful that seems to have been? I was also curious about, have you trialed block scheduling? Like I said, you've trialed block scheduling. The district has trialed block scheduling at Carborough High this year, and that's worked well. Has block scheduling been trialed in the district? And if not, why go for something that hasn't been tried out when you have tried something else that has worked well?
So we'll start with the AB. So the consensus, like you said, from students when we were talking about schedules was that 7-period day when we had the Carborough schedule was not something that people really wanted to continue. I will say that the Carborough schedule with the alternate AB with the 7-period is one of the options. I want to say ended up being ranked like 5th or 6th. One of the combination AB blocks would kind of be similar to the Carborough schedule without the 7-period day, but with the ability to go back and have that semester block. I will say, and I know no one's brought this up yet, that semester piece, when we're thinking about our students that are coming on from different countries, they're coming in undercredited, we need, and that was part of the conversation with our committee, is trying to figure out what are ways that we can create opportunities for those students to make sure that they're not coming in and having to take English 1, 2, 3, and 4 all in a given year. What are some ways that we're able to kind of catch them up, allow them some different opportunities to take some classes that they need to actually get to graduate. In terms of looking at the other schedules and piloting a block schedule, I will say that's part of what this whole conversation is about. And instead of just saying we're going to pilot it, but actually moving forward with making sure that we're aligned. I will say, and this hasn't been brought up either, as we're moving forward, the one opportunity that I have seen, talking with people from around the state, is we are dramatically missing the mark on being able to allow students to dual enroll in our community colleges. We have students that in other counties are taking basically their regular course of study, yet they're leaving high school with 39 credits. And that's a huge financial burden that's kind of taken off parents. Those students also are not required to take, the parents, those students are not required to pass an AP exam. And when we're looking at those AP exams too, I just want to, as we bring that up a lot when we're in these conversations, on average, our students in 912 take 1.39 AP courses a year. That means some take 7, some take 0, but on average, 1.39. And as we're moving forward from that, also thinking that we have 7 classes, there's a wide variety of other students that are not in those AP classes that we're also looking at in this conversation. Yep, so if you take the number of AP exams that were taken and divide it by the number of students in our district, actually I will tell you it's 1.39 for East, it's 1.29 for Chapel Hill, and it's 1.29 for Carborough.
So whether a student is taking an AP class or not, it seems to me like it's favorable for them to have, their math courses or their English courses over the entire year and have the courses spread out, not necessarily meeting every day, but meeting, every other day. And they're going to retain the material much better. I mean, a big part of the concern here was that you have a student that takes, their Math 1 or whatever math course for one semester, and then the next semester they have something else scheduled, PE or whatever in that block, right? Or Spanish, but not math. And so they go a whole semester then without math, and then it's really hard to retain math. You ask them at the end of that second semester what they remember from the first semester, it's going to be a lot less than if you were to spread out the same material from that math course, the one semester math course, over the entire year, because it just gives the student more time to absorb the material. And that's true whether we're talking about AP or not AP. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. I'm really concerned that if you send students to a block schedule that's not AB, that this is going to be a serious problem. I also wanted to mention, just so I don't forget, when it does come to this is true for some AP courses, maybe for some other science courses too, there are some science courses that have labs, and I don't really understand how the labs would work with a block schedule. I know they have them at Carrboro, for science courses that need that right now, and they're doing the AB scheduling, but I don't know how that would work with a block schedule.
So I will speak to the science piece first. And those same classes are taken at Chapel High, and it takes up 2 periods. So honestly, those are the classes that are actually being taken over, the entire course of the year. And they may divide it. So it may be, I don't think they're going to do a lab every other day, but they have the flexibility within that to do what they need to with kids. When it comes to the 7 periods versus 4 periods, I will say when we did have the conversation with district administration, the thing that comes up over and over again, and it came up with students over and over again, the pressure that we put on our students in this district right now with a 7-period whatever is overwhelming for our students across every single group that we talk to. The pressure, I just need more time, I can't sleep. When we're going around and talking to students and they're saying, I haven't gotten more than 6 hours of sleep since I was in middle school, that's a problem. When we limit and say, okay, you can take 4 classes, you can focus on that, our hope is that alleviates some of that pressure from some of our students. And in all honesty, kind of put some barriers in and say, okay, you're taking these 4, focus really well on them. And for some students, and I do get if it's every day or every other day for math or whatever, it could be beneficial. I will also say, talking to some of our students that may struggle in some of those areas, students have taken math K through 8, and they're not, they're struggling with it. Having a break just to be like, okay, I'm not going to a class this semester, I could still be getting some help, but I'm not going to this class to feel like I'm not understanding the material again, was something that they looked at. It's like, okay, that could be a benefit. Oops, sorry.
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm a 10th grader at Carrboro High School. You mentioned homework and stuff. I think a lot of people, I think the AB schedule has worked a lot better than all periods every day. And I think it'll work better than the block schedule because, this is especially for, I have a lot of friends who do sports, right? So who get home, later at night and so have less time to do their homework. If you have A classes on Tuesdays and then an A class on Thursday, you're assigned homework, right? But if you don't have enough time to do it on Tuesday, you can do it on Wednesday as well. So that gives a lot of students at Carrboro, I think, more time to complete their homework that they wouldn't get with the all periods or with the 4x4.
So I wanted to return to your comment that you made a point to raise about community colleges, about alignment, and this also speaks to some stuff you talked about last Monday, which was about being able to take classes other places. I don't understand the logistics. The more I've thought about it, it does not work unless we're teleporting, unless they're Zooming, and then it doesn't really make any sense, because if you, and there was some discussion, I think your answer to the question that I had asked last Monday was, well, that's what they'll use the flex time for, is they'll use the flex time to go over to a different school, to go Durham Tech, Alamance. However, how do they get back to their home school to be bused home? Because, and I think it would be a big equity thing, issue to think that parents are going to pick up their kids, or that kids are going to drive themselves. That's assuming a lot that kids have their own cars. Anyway, that's a concern I have, that there's this big push to align. It's like actually bullet number 1 on like the 3 items of why we're even looking at the schedule is because we want to align and be able to do this, but I don't see how that would happen without Star Trek.
No, so hopefully we have students that can invent the Star Trek, but in that time frame in between there. So I will tell you, surrounding districts that have strong partnerships with their local community colleges, one, they're able to have a large enough number that it's not necessarily a transportation issue of like those students have to go to campus. There's so many students that the campus comes to the individual schools. They're also partnering with the individual teachers to say, okay, for some of your caseload or your student load, you might have 3 classes that are, district classes, but then you may have a couple of classes that are community college classes, and because you have a master's degree, you are able to teach those classes and students are able to get that community college credit. I will say with that, like it's really like we have to build the infrastructure to be able to do some of these things before you can show that like, okay, we can do all of these things. I will tell you there are some high schools that have about 1,400 kids in their high school, and on average they have about 400 kids that are taking community college classes from instructors that are coming in, or they do have some that are remote, but there are plenty of different opportunities and options for them to do that.
Which then in turn reduces class size. Which then in turn reduces class size at the school for the other courses as students kind of come out. So that's just one of the benefits that we've seen when students are engaged with community colleges.
So you were talking about taking classes at a community college rather than AP for some things. So could they take AP biology or something does Durham, like what classes do Durham Tech or Alamance teach that are similar to the classes that are AP?
I'll say lots. And that's honestly, that for us is something that we need to do a better job advertising. We are, I would say, and when I say we, high school principals have been meeting with Durham Tech probably about monthly just to get the information as to what does that actually look like. So with Durham Tech, like their classes, what we can do is I can send out, or we can put out somewhere what those classes are, because we have an exchange for exchange, like this course counts for this. But a lot of the courses that we offer as AP courses do have that capability of being taught at any of our schools. So we have like our linear algebra course. I know it's not an AP class, but that's something they offer. There's a variety of different classes that can. Also understanding, I know for some students AP is the route they want to go because they may not be going to a college within the state, and the credit transfer may not be as easy. For any in-state university, public university, those credits are guaranteed to transfer. So that's where as a family, like, there are those conversations of, all right, am I taking Durham Tech because I know that our future is something within the state? Am I going to take AP because I might want to look at something that might transfer elsewhere? But there are a plethora of different options that are offered, and the weight's the same. Correct. Yep, and the weight is the exact same as an AP course. And in all honesty, you don't have to pass. There is no like end of AP, exam that you have to take and you have to pass to get the credit. You get the credit for taking the course. If your grade is passing, then you get the credit.
Next year, but it's a full year course. But it's not actually at the campus though. Like I don't know exactly how it works, but.
But it is doing it for the whole year, though, instead of just doing it for the semester.
So in our conversations, it's been really based around semester class. If there are those other ones, and that's where, within the individual schedules, our principals are going to have to work. If that's something that's, happening over the course of the entire year, it may be, okay, well, let's see what other course we could offer during that block time to make sure that they get an additional credit during that time. So that would kind of be where that skinny piece might come in. Well, yes, it's that 4x4. Like when we're working with community partners, at first, until we can almost dictate because we have the numbers to dictate it, we are going to have to build that infrastructure and the numbers for them to come to us. Right now, we're going to have to kind of work within what they have. But the hope is, and even talking with Durham Tech, the more and more numbers that we have coming into that option, the more and more options they're going to be able to offer us in terms of what classes we can take.
Yeah, I think it's not well publicized, but even if you look at our sister district, Orange County schools, they take advantage of community college partnerships at a level we don't. I'll give you a piece of data. So what I think it was the graduating class of 2021 in Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools, 17% of that student population took courses with the community college. Orange County Schools was almost double that. We also found out that many of our students are taking these courses at community colleges, Durham Tech, and may be like 1 or 2 courses away from receiving a credential. And to your point, and not even know it. And so, those are the types of things that we want to alleviate with, some of the information. This doesn't really have to do with scheduling, but knowing that a significant number of our students, in working with Durham Tech in the year 2021, 30% of our student population chose post-secondary options outside of a 4-year university. So it's either military, community college, work, or nothing. And so we have a significant amount of our population that doesn't necessarily choose 4 years. I don't know that off the top of my head, but we can.
Well, and I will also, just to add to that, since you're going to ask the question, right now we don't have the schedule necessarily that lines up to our colleges. If they're offering semester-long courses, you have to, as in Chapel Hill or East, you've got to commit to a certain time frame. If you're saying, okay, well, I've got to give up these 2 classes to take this one here, and then if you don't continue on to take another class the second semester, then yeah, you're going to have a hole in your schedule. So in all honesty, when we say that alignment, it's alignment across high schools. It is also alignment with our community partners. When we're talking about Durham Tech, I know Dr. Trice gave a couple things. When we're looking at where our kids go when they leave our district, number 1 is UNC, number 2 is NC State, number 3 is Durham Tech. That's where our kids are leaving when they leave us. Being able to give them a head start on that is an opportunity that, like I've said, it's just an opportunity that we're not giving to a lot of our students that we need, and we need to do a better job advertising and making sure that we're able to do that.
So it seems like if the district adopts this 4x4 schedule, that's very likely that there will be a shift for a lot of students from AP to dual enrollment, and it sounds like the district wants that. Is that fair to assume? Yeah, you want to be able to give the option. So who pays for the dual enrollment? I'm not familiar with that. Does that come out of a different pot of money? Because if there's a lot of students kind of shifting that way from AP, who's paying and how does that work?
So as of right now, this very moment, and I'm saying that because I always know that things can change. Right now, the district doesn't pay for that. That's part of the state funding, and that's why Durham Tech wants to increase their numbers and their partnership with us too, because they know that that's not a financial barrier that anyone really faces besides them getting more people so they can get more state funding through that. So yes, we want to give parents the option and the ability to choose kind of what's best for their family, but yeah.
Just to kind of give you an example that we've seen in other districts. So in some of these pathways, for instance, I'll use architecture. There are students that if you enter the community college pathway, by the time you graduate, you could graduate with an associate's degree. and have 2 years left that transfers to any UNC system. Like, there have been districts around North Carolina for almost 20 years taking advantage of these types of things, and they're not even on our radar. See, that's the great thing. We don't lose money. If our students go to Durham Tech and take advantage of those graduation pathways, so the students will leave our schools, which reduces the class size, you know, during the school day, but we're not losing any FTEs for students.
Earlier, you had said, say there was a student that struggled in math, and they were kind of like, "Ooh, I have a break where I don't have to think about it, but I can maybe continue to get help." What would that look like? How would they have to seek out, like, whatever? I guess I don't understand how the flex time works, and would they have to be motivated enough to go seek that out?
No, so that's a really good point. Like, in terms of our flex time, so our schools, and some schools to varying degrees this year, because I think they were trying it out, use a program called Edmenta, or not, I don't remember what the name of it is. There's lots of Edficiency, thank you. And what that does is it allows the teacher to actually say, like, I'm requesting this kid during this time. So if I had a student, I was a former math teacher, so if I had a student that I knew struggled and they were in my class the first semester, I could make sure that I purposely pulled that student a couple of times during the second semester to, you know, follow up with them during that flex. Remembering too that flex was something that, when we brought up with students, was something that they wanted every single day. We wouldn't want that flex to be something that a kid felt was like a punishment, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this now, I'm doing math today, I'm getting pulled for science tomorrow. That's where our school leaders, you know, have to be very trained on it, with our ITFs, to make sure that students are getting pulled for what they need, but then also having that time to catch up on what other things they need to catch up on. Do I need to go into a science class because I didn't pass the science test, I need to get retaught? Do I need time just to, like, catch up on homework today? Do I need time just to breathe? And I think that's where some of that flex time will come in. If we're looking at, and I'll just give you a number, if we're looking at a 35-minute flex over the course of a year, that provides 101.5 hours for our students to, you know, flex where they want to go during that time, and allows our teachers to pull students during that time too. So while it's called flex, and I know we didn't evaluate it, and we were talking about this earlier, we didn't necessarily evaluate and say it's instructional time. I would say our flex time, in all honesty, is probably where the most intense, structured, focused instruction time is actually going to be, because you have that opportunity to, you know, have a dedicated time where you may only have a group of, you know, 3 to 5, because at that point during flex, every single one of your teachers is available to take kids. We're in a regular schedule. We have planning time and other things that, you know, people need.
To follow up on that, though, is if you're a kid that's not, let's say your kid is doing pretty well, so he's not being pulled in, so my son might have 2 hours a day of getting his homework done, but I mean, when it's that much unstructured time, are you gonna run into behavioral issues? Because as I understand it right now, you limit, like, they don't even have lockers at Chapel Hill High School because you don't want to limit how much time people are milling around.
No, but I think we're good still. No, so with that, and that was part of the conversation with district and school administrators, is, you know, looking at the different schedules. There were some that's like, all right, you have 92 minutes every other day for a flex time. The 4x4 that we had up there had 35 minutes every single day. So it's not 2 hours, it's enough to, like, okay, I can get pulled in to do something. I can breathe for a minute. And I would say, talking to principals, like, that was something that they probably didn't want to do, because that would be more the smart lunch. They would want to separate those. So if you're looking at it, you'd almost have, like, block 1, block 2, lunch, block 3, flex, and then block 4. So in all honesty, you're only ever taking 2 classes back to back without a flex or a lunch to kind of be the, I'll say, break in between.
You don't have to turn it around.
First of all, I just want to thank you guys for, I can't imagine all the data and stuff that you've dug into to even get this far. I do think that it's the idea of getting all of our high schools on the same schedule. I can see the benefit in that. I have 3 kids that are in 2nd grade, 7th, and 9th. So I'm just barely into my high school hours, and I have a lot more to go, so I'm very interested in this process. So I think that's a lofty goal. My kid is here at Carrboro, and so, you know, I think coming here and going to this modified block, I didn't really know what to expect, but he has been very happy. You know, after coming out of middle school that was the same classes all day, every day, he has echoed what this student here said about if he got a lot of homework on a Tuesday night, that he had 2 nights to get it done. And he said it just feels less, he's not as stressed, and it's just more chill. And I think that's a great comment to come from a 9th grade student, that the schedule is working for him. He's also had a couple of illnesses this year where he missed tests, and he's been able to make them up in, I think, the JAG block or the flex time that they have, which I think is excellent, that he hasn't had to miss a class in order to make up something. Let's see, there was one other thing. Oh, and also he's taken 1 AP this year, but hopes to take more in the future. And the block schedule of having it just in 1 semester, I'm just not a fan of the having it in the fall and then waiting until the exam in May and the lost instruction and the lost memory that might happen. But also with the way that our calendar works, it's been echoed. I can't imagine it being crammed into the January to May exam dates. So I think at some point, I've looked at all the data. I think there was a modified schedule that had some that were year-round and some that were, I don't know, I don't have the perfect answer here, but I just wanted to say that my 9th grader is happy with what the modified block offers, and so just wanted to add that comment today, and my concern about the APs if you go to all block.
I was just going to follow up that, I don't need that, I'm pretty loud.
Okay. The Green Hope School, they do offer both. They do not have just the 4x4. They offer year-round classes for their AP classes and stuff like that. So I just wanted to follow up on that.
And in their guide for how to succeed at APs on the several classes, I will read to you directly from their guide,
which is unofficial. You will learn a lot. Oh, hold on. I should go to the one above it. That's the more dramatic one. Let's be dramatic. The workload is very difficult. If your goal is to get an A, taking it semester long is not recommended. The year-long option is much more viable. Then it goes through to other courses and says it again. You will learn a lot in the course. Tests are difficult. Don't take it year-long. I mean, don't take it semester-long. Take it year-long. It's too much to fit into a semester. So, I mean, Green Hope was the example you gave us, but Green Hope is telling us not to do semester-long APs for best practice. But I did want to ask a question. I wanted to ask a question about being able to fill teacher roles. And this came up at the Chapel Hill High School School Improvement Team. So Chapel Hill High School could not hire all the teachers it had open this year. We have 7 new spots based on the number of people coming in to hire next year. We are not even a little bit hopeful that we're going to be able to hire all the teachers that we have spots to hire. And so what happens right now at Chapel Hill is that a teacher will offer to teach a 6th class. There are 7 classes, they teach 5, they have 2 planning periods. They're able to teach a 6th class, they get 16% of their salary. It's a win-win, teachers make more money. We don't have to have 45-person classes because a teacher can fill in when a teacher is not there. Our administration is very concerned about a 4x4 block because if you have teachers teaching, you won't have an extra class period that allows teachers to take on an extra class without teaching 100% of the time. And so the net effect in a world where we can't hire teachers is that we'll have 40 and 45, we'll have enormous classes because we can't bring on another teacher, we can't hire a teacher. And the net effect, and this is, kind of collaborative damage, is that in addition to teaching more, so right now our teachers teach 5 classes in the block, it sounds like they would teach 6 for the same amount of money. They're not getting the supplement anymore, but they're actually going to lose money because they're no longer getting a supplement. And so our teachers are looking at, and they're not happy. So my corollary statement here is teacher feedback has not been considered. I know the Chapel Hill meeting in response to this Trego Ed report was exceedingly negative. Nowhere do I see that reflected anywhere. Teachers do not like this schedule, at least at my school. Tracy is my good friend. Her child is my child's good friend. My suspicion is people who love Carrboro. People who love the traditional schedule love the traditional schedule. My kid is also very happy and at this moment not overly stressed. I think people like what they know, but the teachers are not being considered in this equation. Their feedback is not being considered in this equation. The survey that was given to them was freakishly weird. It didn't actually ask them, and it twisted kind of their responses. There's no, this is what the teachers think. And so the teachers, their feedback is not being considered. They're actually going to lose money at my high school anyway, because they're not getting paid to do it. They see themselves as having to teach more for less money, and to do this all while teaching a traditional schedule next year, because we're giving them exactly 1 year. So what are the supports in place to get them up to speed, to have them restructure all their classes for different things while they're still teaching the schedule they're supposed to be teaching? There's just not enough time to do it. Our principal is exceedingly concerned that he's going to have big classes, because he's not going to be able to get somebody to fill in or teach a 6 schedule when we can't hire all the teachers, and that we have 3 new principals. We're not giving our principals any time to get to know their schools, who their teachers are, what they want, and how to proceed. We're kind of foisting on them. Really, I mean, this to me, honestly, looks like we had a guiding committee who said opinions that got written down in a report that is now data we cite. This is not real data. I mean, look at the beginning here. We talk about maximizing instructional time. In the long block, it gets a 10 out of 10. Maximizing instructional time gets a 6 out of 10 in the traditional block. In theory, the instructional time should be the same. It's just, are we doing it in 1 semester or over 2? So why is that number weirdly skewed in the longer period of time, but not in the shorter period of time? I mean, the answer is it's made up. It's not actual data. And so I have real concerns about that. I'll be back later. Love to hear responses. I'm here all week, folks.
All right. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. So I.
And teachers are actually going to lose money when they don't get 15% of their salary.
So yeah, like we're in the current schedule that we're recommending, if a teacher were to take on an extra period, which means they would teach 100%, then that which is not going to happen. And I think Dr. Sullivan raised that concern, and what I would say is that benefit is certainly not extended to the other teachers in the other schools to the degree it is in Chapel Hill, at Chapel Hill High. And we can't necessarily make our decision based on a financial interest that is clearly there.
So to clarify, you're good with teachers getting paid less?
Well, what I'm saying is that the guiding committee, which was representative of each school in Lincoln Center, when it came time to rate the schedules, we did not include financial self-interest in any of our recommendations. We identified it as a risk. You will see it in the report where, some teachers may lose the opportunity to earn extra duty. But there are other ways that teachers can earn extra duty within a school. It just wouldn't be through teaching an extra period if there wasn't an opportunity to do so.
You said we ranked, the guiding committee ranked, and that is what it feels like. People rank these things, and then now we use this as data. What are the data? And again, this maximizing instructional time is a good example. In theory, there should be the same instructional time. It depends on how it's allocated.
Right.
In the block schedule, it gets 10 points. In the traditional, it gets 6 points, which feels like,
Well, the reason for that is because we take into account community input. When students were saying, I need more time, I feel rushed, and so when you have the larger blocks of time, they will get a higher score. I would push back and say that this is, not arbitrary. As Dr. Bales pointed out, each time you see a rating, each time you see a risk, that's a conversation that the guiding committee had as a team.
it's a conversation, but it's not data.
Well, it was the consensus of the team that was responsible for making the recommendation. Who was in charge of making the recommendation? Yeah.
The data we're using to rate these things
Is the guiding committee.
the small
Yeah.
As an example,
Right.
asking, can I be part of this? Can I share my information?
Okay.
So you didn't get my opinion unless you read my emails, which I'm sure you did.
Yes.
And on top of that, parents didn't get feedback.
Right.
The survey that came out was awful. We were promised a new survey. It never happened. No other survey came out to parents. And in fact, this meeting, nobody walked us through this report. If you didn't go dig for it, you didn't know. You know, I actually sent you a note asking you to share this with people on the day that it got shared. Perhaps you were doing it anyway, but that's what happened. And then parents have no mechanism for feedback. We were given 1 week notice on this meeting. This is not a way to proceed.
Well, I think the dates were published well before 1 week for this. You're talking about this meeting?
The one last Thursday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
6 days. We sent out a notice to parents.
Right.
6 days. If you were not in the weeds looking up all the things yourself, the notice that came out to parents
Right.
was 6 days before.
So I do want to address one part of your question where you said teachers didn't get feedback. So Trago Ed in the very beginning went to each campus for a full day, and that's all they did is get feedback from teachers.
I know for a fact that at my school, teachers were enormously negative about Blocks. There is nowhere that that is reflected.
Well,
Like it doesn't even say teachers didn't like this, but we're going to do it anyway. Nowhere is it reflected.
well, it is reflected that teachers, and I think you hit on this, largely like the schedule that they have. That's in the report.
So what you're saying now is we're not really paying attention to teachers because we don't
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the guiding committee was charged with studying the alignment of schedules. We did get some feedback from teachers, and you can see it in the report where they feel like teachers in Chapel Hill High felt like they do a good job on the schedule they have. That's in the report.
And if we're talking about alignment, why would we change? 2 schools are aligned to get great test scores and
Okay.
rank in the top 20 of the state schools.
Okay.
They're already aligned. 2 schools, big ones. Why would we not, A, move the smaller school with less test scores to that alignment, that's alignment, or why would we not take the 2 big schools and say, we're going to suck it up and move you to this alignment because we want that?
Well,
Why would we make everybody do something new with no training for teachers in a very short time frame, all new principals? This is not about alignment. So I guess my real question is, what's it actually? Is it daily intervention time for students?
well,
Cost savings? It's not alignment. Our 2 biggest schools are already aligned and figuring it out.
well, what I would say is that all the schedules that we have in the district are one of the 12. And so when we were tasked with alignment of high school schedules based on the criteria that the community said they wanted to address, you know, and you can kind of see that. Okay.
You did not have say. Let's remember that. We never got a reasonable survey.
Well, based on the criteria that we received, we evaluated each schedule against that. And the guiding committee voted as a group, but as well as individuals. And when you look at the individual votes of the guiding committee, which includes all schools, I mean, there was largely a high amount of agreement with the top 3. I mean, that's what I would say. I can go here and then I might go here.
It's just a question about the data. Do you have this community-driven criteria documented in the research? And where did that come from?
So when, you know, the initial 2 questions that we asked teachers, what do you like about your current schedule? What would you change? Well, the community, like, right. And so when I was speaking of community, I'm thinking of everyone, teachers, parents, students, yeah. Right. Right. So we originally focused on our teachers, right, where they talked about what they wanted and liked in their current schedule. Well, I'm trying to give you a sense of how. So once we identified what teachers felt was most important in a schedule, to address, whether they liked it or they wanted to get rid of it. We flipped that same information to parents and said, here's what the teachers feel is most important. As parents, what do you, within this scope, what do you feel is most important? And that's the information that we got from the parent survey.
Should I pull out the survey and like we were told not to do this. We were told another one was there was an uproar about this. When I called Lincoln Center, I was personally told by Lincoln Center and by a board member that survey was terrible. We're distraught about it. It doesn't make sense. Stay tuned. Something else is coming. And I'm happy to pull out the questions. The words literally don't make sense.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I-
The words literally don't make sense. Feedback was not collected from me.
Okay.
It was not collected.
Well, so that's the feedback that we received from parents. Outside of that, we also did community walks where we went into public housing areas as well as part of our racial equity decision-making protocol, where we talked to about 30 families in public housing communities, where we got parent feedback on, again, what do you want in a schedule? What do you like about your current schedule? What would you change? Which is also a part of the report. And then lastly, I think, this forum. And I would also add that, I've lived here for a very long time as well. And right, and I just told you, so right. Right. And we had extensive student interviews as well. Yep.
I just want to add that I agree that parent survey was very confusing. I do my best to answer the surveys when they come if they're relevant to my children, and I answered the first question. The second question, I read it multiple times and just didn't really know what to do with it. And so I'm curious, now that we're at this stage of the process, can you share with us the percentage of families that completed that survey, or can you share the actual data that was collected? Like, what percentage of our community, of our parents, actually completed that survey? And I also heard that there might be another one coming out, and so I was hopeful that there would be one. And also, I guess, what percentage of students in our community were surveyed? Because I know my student, I don't think he was surveyed. And the middle schoolers that are going to be coming up into high school, a lot of I applaud that senior that was here to share their 2 cents, especially about the arts and the skills and whatnot. But I think that the students that are coming up, behind the ones that are graduating, should maybe have some input as well that might be helpful.
So we had over 800 responses to the survey. I don't know what the percentage of that is with respect to the district, but in speaking with our research department in terms of how does this line up with others, our research department felt like it was a pretty good sample size. There are also, in speaking with our research department, anytime we give a survey, there are people who push back against the survey. And
Publish the results of the research. I actually work in my
mm-hmm.
you could never say something like it's a pretty clear reason. Like that doesn't mean things like percentages.
Right.
It means a number of respondents.
Well, we had over 800 respondents. Right. Yeah.
Any response you got, you can't possibly extrapolate anything.
Well, yeah.
I'm not kidding. And Tracy is like, I'm more inflammatory than Tracy. When Tracy is telling you
Mm-hmm.
your survey was crap, you can take that to the bank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm going to tell you that all day long.
Mm-hmm.
But no, what I'm saying is the questions literally didn't, like the words literally together did not make sense.
Okay.
You could not have extrapolated any, A, information, B, statistically significant information. And again, I was told by leadership at Lincoln Center and a board member, sit tight, don't
Who at Lincoln Center told you that?
Just relax, we're getting another one out.
Who at Lincoln Center?
Go find my email and I'll just forward it. We were told we were getting another survey, we sat tight, we didn't answer the awful one. And I mean, I have screenshots of all of this. There is no data you could extrapolate from that survey.
Okay.
The words didn't make sense. So 800 people responded. What did you get?
Right. Well, we got what was kind of reflected in our report.
But that's the problem.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right.
The report is based on nothingness, the opinions of the guiding committee. It's based on a survey that you literally couldn't comprehend, that some of your top volunteers didn't answer because they were told they were getting another one. And then we put it here in the report format that now is the data we're going to cite. That's exactly the problem. This recommendation is based on the opinions of the guiding committee and on absolutely faulty or non-existent ways of collecting community. You have just identified the exact problem.
I have a question just generally about when the students were surveyed, what did their survey look like? Were they shown this and say, would you prefer a 4x4 block schedule, an AB block schedule, and all of the others? Or were they just sort of said, what don't you like about your current schedule? Because I know if I were to ask my high schoolers, they could give me a whole list of things they don't like and about how much homework they have. But if I sat them down and said, would you want a 4x4 or an AB? They would have an opinion that may be different.
So we didn't know, what model would be adopted. We asked community members, including students, what do they like about their current schedule, and what are the barriers or limitations to their current schedule.
And it feels like it should be a staged thing, right? You gather the information and then you kind of narrow down the number of blocks based on this information gathering. And then once you narrow down the number of block schedules that you're based on that data, then you reach back out to everyone, the students, all the teachers and community, and say, these are the three that we are leaning towards. And can everyone now that we have all this information? Because I remember looking at the survey before I really know what was coming out and kind of thinking, how do I even answer these questions without knowing specifically which side of the block? I'm not familiar with many different block settings. I don't know the sides that turn out
Right.
so like, I can't answer a question about my opinion about something if I don't know which one. Because some of these I really hate. And some of them, I think would be much better. And I do like the idea of block scheduling. I love the idea of longer class periods, the teachers being able to potentially teach a lesson and then be able to have a lab afterwards, or just being able to do more in-depth things. I think that's very awesome. But I still feel like you can't make the decision without going back to community and saying to everyone, these are like three or four that we think are the best, basically, but now vote and give us your feedback.
Right. So from the very onset, this was not a vote on which we liked the most. What we said from the very onset is that the guiding committee would take all of the information we have. We tried to have as many data points as possible so that our board could triangulate data to make a good decision. But at the end of the day, our guiding committee, which also included students, made a recommendation for, kind of like the order that the schedules are presented. Clearly, 3 rose to the top. And from that, our school leaders and district leaders took the work of the guiding committee, and it's just an administration's recommendation to the board. Ultimately, the board will have to make the decision.
It's just a quick question. What was the?
Oh, sure. Sorry. No, no worries. That's like all the glaring sun in my eye. What do you think is the biggest challenge you're trying to solve with this? Like, what was the biggest challenge you were trying to solve by the move?
So I don't know if there's a biggest challenge. There were multiple challenges, I'm sorry. And depending on who you talk to, you get different answers. When we talk to students across demographics, they said they're overwhelmed. And they've historically said that. And so that was a big criteria for the guiding committee. When you talk to a district person, or if you talk to a principal, and we have students transitioning into our district because most schools are on some type of block, they're literally sitting for a half a year because we're not on the block schedule. So that's one thing. When you talk to a student, like a newcomer who might be unschooled or coming to our country and need to catch up on credits, you know, that was a consideration. So there were a lot of different motivations for change, not any one change, you know, aligned to this is what most people in the district asked. A big driver for us was community dual enrollment. So right now we have a third of our kids just about who we know what they select, but there are no options for them. We have students who are taking dual enrollment. So that's the community college option. If I want to pursue architecture, and that's my passion, and I know that from the very beginning, starting in the 9th grade, I can set my pathway to Durham Tech. By the time I graduate, I can have an associate's degree in architecture and perhaps go to NC State to finish my degree. That's half a college paid for by the state. Right now, our students have no way of even dealing with that. But in Durham, they have been doing that for almost 20 years. They just got tens of millions of dollars from private industry to expand their options. So from our standpoint, there are a lot of different motivations in terms of why we would align. But at the very center of it, I would say the work of the guiding committee was all about what our students are saying that they need. And we also listen to teachers because we know that, they're important. I say that to say that we have some work to do, whatever decision that we make as a school district. I'm sorry.
Hi, so I know that flex time has been mentioned quite a bit. Personally, like at Carborough High School, I've done schedules in middle school before without flex time. I like flex time because it is, like, it can help kids, we have it twice a week for maybe, it depends on the day, but maybe like 90 minutes roughly, sometimes less, sometimes more. But it's helpful because students have the opportunity to make up tests, to get extra help from teachers. Heck, even there's a whole tutoring program for newcomer students in our library during flex time, where kids who can speak Spanish come and volunteer and teach these students math in Spanish and get them caught up, and I think that's really valuable. I'm just concerned that so there are a couple of the top 3, schedules. There's one that says do flex time twice a week, and then there's another that's daily. But would the daily flex time be erasing yet more instruction time? Because I think what we have right now is good, but if it meant erasing more time from teachers, I feel like a lot of kids are really struggling, and I feel like erasing in-class time would probably not, more in-class time would probably not be a good idea.
So we talked about that as a guiding committee, and where we tended to land on that is we see flex time as instructional time, just for the very reasons that you pointed out. So there was a lot of debate around the length of flex time. Like, should it be an hour? Should it be 50 minutes? And I think where the guiding committee landed was on kind of like the middle of the road, like 35 minutes a day kind of built into the schedule was kind of like this healthy balance between flex time being long enough that students could actually get the support that they need and kind of keep it moving to the next class, as opposed to having such a long period where it's just like you're kind of sitting there and you don't, it's just kind of, I think someone said in here, it's kind of like unstructured time. And so using the programs that we have for, how we request students that need extra support, I think we'll be able to kind of target students really well with that. But to your point, I don't know that I was in a place where a student said that they didn't think flex time was not important. There was a lot of feedback around the district not being too tight or directing flex time too much, like dictating, well, you need to go to this club and you need to go there, but allowing students and teachers to really determine how best to kind of use that 35 minutes.
35 minutes for most classes is not enough time to take a test. And the first 5 minutes of class are really taking attendance, getting settled, seeing what people are going to, do. And so if we're thinking about 35 minutes of flex time, I would be open to that, as long as it's maybe paired right before lunch or something. That way, if a student really needs more time, a longer set of consecutive time, to take a test or whatever, then they can have that.
So that was also a very good point. Were you on our guiding committee? So I think the team also felt, when I say the team, the guiding committee felt, it's great to look at flex time, but when you have larger blocks of time during the class period, it's not just 80 or 90 minutes of lecture. And so there are various activities that students engage in. And if there are times where small groups of students need extra support during the class time, is when some of that could happen while others are doing homework and that type of thing, or kind of working. So it's the time within the class period in addition to flex time that you can really set up a comprehensive academic support structure as well.
We're going to do one more. So we are at 7:02.
So this isn't my question, but there was one comment before about what questions the students were asked in the surveys. And Ella, you told me you didn't get a survey. Is that right?
No.
So, okay. So you didn't survey not all the students. Okay. But so you're talking about the work that the guiding committee has done, and just one thing that has confused me throughout this is that the recommendation that's in the long report that the administration says they're making is for the block scheduling, and the top two recommendations from the guidance committee were not that. The top two were AB hybrid with block and different amounts of flex time. So I'm just confused why the administration is choosing something that does not align with the recommendations of the guidance committee. And I say that, also thinking, again, having seen the AB scheduling, at least AB scheduling with the +1 hybrid work at Carrboro High, and also noticing that AB scheduling just period without that +1 day was not a part of the options that was in the committee report. So why a different recommendation than what was in the committee report? Why is there a different recommendation, the third one, I think, or third or fourth one from that report that the administration is going with? And then why not try AB scheduling, which, is something that has been successful at Carrboro High?
So with that, when you look at the very last thing that we did as a guiding committee is we sat down and we took an individual vote. And I believe that's in that as well. So there was 3 different schedules that kind of rose to the top that the guiding committee felt we would be comfortable. And honestly, the exact words it's been 9 days. These are the 3. There's not any other 3 that really match. So those 3 were the 2 combinations, and then the 4x4, the one that we're showing here. So when we looked at the numbers, one of the combinations, and I want to say that was the rotating AB without a daily intervention, was the one that initially scored highest. And then second was the other combination, which was actually tied with the 4x4 block with shorter periods when you look at the individual scores on the evaluation. So with the committee, we also wanted them to give us options to be able to go talk to the district administration to actually say, okay, principals, what can we actually do? What's going to work best? You know, when we're looking at the needs of our teachers, of our community members, students, which one do we feel we're not going to look 5 years down the line and go, man, I really wish we would have done X, Y, or Z. The one thing that we were told, and we reiterated a couple times on our committee, said this as well. When we make a decision, we have to weigh the positives and the risk and go, okay, are these risks that we can live with and mitigate to make sure that we're doing what's best for kids in the future? I will say, in that conversation with principals and district administration, like the social well-being of kids, I come up again and again and again. And there's a huge difference between focusing on 4 classes and 7 or 8 in other schedules. So I will say it was a unanimous, every single principal, district administrator, when we got off that call, was all in alignment that this is the one that we were going to be moving forward with. Not to say that the other ones don't have value. I mean, they absolutely do. We had conversation about those too, but this is the one that we felt with what we wanted as a district and school administration would meet the needs of, honestly, like not having that stress for kids and being able to allow them to, you know, continue on.
So I just want to talk about next steps. So I'm sure you all know that Dr. Bells and I will present to the board this Thursday the full report. We've kind of released the report as well. The board will not be taking action on May 2nd. The first opportunity that I believe we can take action, or the board will take action, is the May 16th board meeting. Again, we'll present our findings, our recommendations. Doesn't mean the board will take action, but it will be on the discussion and action agenda. So this is also an opportunity, like if there's additional feedback or input or information or perspectives that you want to share with me and Dr. Bells, we would certainly be open to that. Certainly our community is well aware of also sharing feedback with our board members, so that's an option as well. But I just want to take a moment to thank you all for being here today and asking the tough questions. It's not an easy decision for any of us. It's, you know, so just appreciate you just taking the time out to kind of share your perspectives and concerns. So thank you very much.